And I, especially on behalf of the board, very much appreciate the time in which we are trying to meet and all of the challenges that all of our members are facing right now. And so it's really gratifying to see so many of us committed to getting together and talk about how we're coping with the challenges in front of us today. Before we get started with our panel, I'd like to ask all of the board members present to please say aye so that we can confirm that you're with us today. I see
Aye.
Felton.
I'm here.
Felton Thomas, and any other board members present?
Nico Fun.
Nico?
Elaine Westbrooks.
Elaine?
Laura?
I think
Laura? I have Felton, Nico, Elaine, and Laura. Other board members? Okay, well, obviously I'm present as well. That being said, we should have quite a bit to discuss today, and I'd like to turn the meeting over to John Bracken, our Executive Director, at this time.
thank you, Denise, and thank you everyone for joining us. You know, it means a lot to have so many folks here. As Denise laid out, this is an unprecedented time for all of us. Like every other community, seems like in the world, our community's being impacted by this moment and has experienced loss. Last week we learned that Joshua Lynch, who was the metadata services specialist for our partners in Illinois, the Illinois Digital Heritage Hub, and at the University of Illinois, had passed away. And so I want to acknowledge that loss and that passing and that pain that an absence we're now feeling in our community. We've all been greatly saddened by the news here at DPLA and hope to say more and recognize Joshua's work and contributions to the field more soon. With that, you know, one of the things that we've done at DPLA is to help give us some guideposts for managing this disruptive time. Was earlier this month we established a 90-day plan, and I just wanted to touch on that as sort of indicative of how we're approaching this moment, this disruption, and this moment of loss and pain in a lot of contexts. First, we are very much focused on increasing the service we can provide to the millions of folks who are now finding themselves at home, looking for free quality information and content. So we're one of the things the team's working on is to make it easier for anyone to customize their own collections out of the material available from our partners at dp.la. Second, as part of that increasing access to content, we've been focused on expanding the accessibility of the ebook offerings that we make available. Some of you might have noticed that yesterday we turned on freebooks.dp.la as an open catalog of free ebooks that anyone can download and use. And that's a collection that we look to grow and add to in the coming months. At the same time, we're growing the titles and the types of licensing available, the flexible licenses available to libraries, and making that available through our services. And I guess the other opportunity I want to make clear is we're trying to make it easier for folks to work with us. We're expanding our curation core. The curation core is a group of librarians and information professionals and paraprofessionals who have been advising us on our work around collections. Kat, who's managing the chat room, it will put a link into the opportunity we have specifically. We're putting a call out for folks that want to be active in that community curation core, which is growing rapidly. Second, if you go to jobs.dp.la is where we post open positions. At present, we are looking for applications for a front-end developer, as someone to add to our team. And the last bit I want to touch on before handing it over to our guests is we're looking to really make available and increase the number of webinars and information that we're providing to our community through forum like this. And so first, next Tuesday at this same time, we are going to host a webinar to talk about the work we started this year with Wikipedia, focused on Wikipedia to make it easier for our partners to contribute material into the Wikimedia Commons and through that into Wikipedia, and how you and your organization can get involved. So that's next week at 1:30 Eastern Time. That's going to be led by our own data fellow, Dominic Bird McDevitt, and from the Wikimedia Foundation, Sandra Fauconnier, who's the GLAM Wiki specialist. Later this month, on the 27th, I believe, but Kat will correct me in the chat, we'll do a second webinar focused on an overview of our Simply E collaboration, the project that we have been part of under the leadership of New York Public Library, with Lyrasis and our Community Advisory Council. And Brian Bannon of New York Public Library will be leading that webinar. We're going to be adding more services and information points in the weeks and months ahead. Best way to find out about that is to get on our newsletter, which you see at dp.la, and we'll also be posting about webinars as we grow them. I think we're, during this extraordinary time, we're very conscious that our mission is more urgent than ever. Our mission of ensuring broad, equitable access to knowledge and information for everyone. And we're looking over the next few weeks and months to reflect on, with you, on how the world has changed or not changed and how we can best activate that work. One way we are thinking about doing that now is by putting a spotlight on the work of our partners. On the work that we're really lucky to have a group of folks from different parts of our field across the country doing amazing work. And today we get to hear from 3 of those guests. The questions we teased in front of them in brief remarks was to either expand on something that they're worried about at this moment, something that they might be excited or eager to take on during this moment, or something they're curious to see how it unfolds. And they're all encouraged to share that or any other version of how they, as leaders, and they as with their institutional hats, see our missions and see our work adapting and changing. So without further ado, I will pass the mic to Katie McCormick, who, among other things, is the Associate Dean of Libraries for Special Collections at Florida State. She's also the leader of the Sunshine Digital Network, which is a core part of our community, and chairs the DPLA Advisory Council. So Katie, over to you.
Thanks, John, and hi, everyone. Thanks for giving me a good excuse to talk to a broader group of people and put on something other than a t-shirt here in my house as I remote work. So in reflecting on the questions that John and DPLA asked us to think about and share, as John mentioned, I'm the Associate Dean for Special Collections at Florida State University Libraries. So I'm thinking very much about the library's organization in the context of Florida State University. I'm thinking pretty specifically too about the impact of these changes and this current world and where we're going on special collections and archives specifically, and then in managing the Digital Library Center and also being the lead in the Sunshine State Digital Network here in Florida, thinking about how digital environments offer new opportunity and context and possibility in this time. And it's, I think, probably like everyone, my primary concern is people. It's difficult to keep up with what has been almost a daily changing space and future. We're waiting to hear very much about financial and economic impact and looking at what's happening broadly across the United States, particularly in academic libraries and universities, thinking about how similar but different this is from the 2008 financial downturn, and what prioritization or the model of service and work looks like in the midst of both potentially heavy financial impact, but also we're not there and we're not doing the things that we normally do. So I think where I'd like to focus in these few minutes, kind of coming out of that context, is I think what I'm hopeful for or excited about, or where I'm trying to direct my own energies and the energies of those who work with me and who work in the Sunshine State Digital Network, towards kind of what I'm excited about in a way, or what I'm curious about, as John asked. And I think it really centers for me around collaborations and potential, so that in the Sunshine State Digital Network, where our goals coming into March were really focused on content development and identifying and nurturing and creating partnerships that provided additional access to cultural heritage materials coming from the state of Florida into DPLA, that in this moment, that's not quite possible in the same way that it was. Our partners across the state are facing heavy impact on their workforce, on their lives, just as we all are. So we've made a concerted effort to really think in a different direction about what network building, community building, and creating sustainable community and conversation in the midst of crisis, and how do we carry that forward. I think a lot about that in terms of connections and community building, building understanding for the impact and effects that a situation like this has on a wide array of organizations, not just academic institutions, and how a network and a broader community outside or in addition to the kind of regular communities we might participate in. So whether that be academic library consortiums, or in the state of Florida, we've got some other state partnerships and networks happening, that DPLA and SSDN is really a network of multiple kinds of organizations in a way that some of the other consortiums or partnerships are not. And what is it that we can do? What is it that we can understand about how to help each other with project planning, project creation, supporting work, supporting remote work or work. I don't know where this is going to take us over the course of the next year or two, but if we're not physically in the building together or in our workspaces for another couple of months, another 6 months, longer than that, how we relate, how we identify things that can get done, and how we continue to meet our missions of connecting people to materials and possibility and learning, we're in a new environment. And I think the positive possibility that might come out of this is necessitating different kinds of conversations, creating space to do some of the work or imagining of different types of partnerships, the utilization of different types of technologies. I think where DPLA's 90-day plan comes into this, offers us some new possibilities, not just to think about adding content, but really digging deep into what's the relationship between digitized cultural heritage resources and ebooks. What is interplay in terms of community interaction and engagement? How does this help us market and share the rich resources that we know are available or are even more deeply embedded in the wide variety of organizations we all interact with or represent? And how do we help make that work resonate, and are we able to engage with that? Coming out of some conversations this week about financial impact, I think a lot about particularly in the special collections and archives, public library, historical societies, small organization, archival organization context. If we're not able to be physically with collections and we're already working in an environment that not everybody fully understands and not everybody completely appreciates the importance of our history, our records, the content of and documentation of our cultures and our experiences, how do we help engage in this situation so that we don't lose those organizations and the folks who are gathering, documenting community experiences, but that we're also able to provide platforms and work streams, I'll say, for people to engage in that material in new and important ways. That it's, to me, it's sort of a double-edged sword, that we run the risk and there will be financial impact on these organizations, and yet we're in a time, and particularly through DPLA, I think we have new opportunities to share what we have and engage with, help people engage with this materials in new and meaningful ways and creative ways, because everybody's home. And so how do we do this? How do we identify new audiences and really get to them? So it's sort of a big ramble in all of those different directions, but that's where my mind is ruminating right now. Thanks, John. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Katie. Before I turn it over to Mark, I also want to shout out another board member who just joined, Jennifer Lee, who's here. So thank you, Jenny. And now I'll ask Mark Smith to share his thoughts, thinking about identifying new audiences. Katie's last comment is a good tee up for Mark. Mark's the director and librarian at the Texas State Library and Archives Commission. Mark, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, John. Appreciate that. And I appreciate the DPLA board for inviting me to participate in this meeting today and to share some thoughts. I thought just before I start, I'll just give you a brief report on what's happening in Texas. It's probably not different from what's happening in a lot of states right now. We have 90% of our libraries are closed, and that probably accounts for about 95 to 98% of the population of the state is probably now served by a library that is temporarily closed. Of the 10% that are open, those are mainly small community libraries across the state of Texas. Most have very limited service hours. They either have reduced hours or they're doing some kind of modified schedule. A lot of curbside pickup, virtual programming, remote resources, of course, Wi-Fi. Those stories you hear about people pulled up in the parking lot using the library Wi-Fi, that's happening all over Texas. We had a webinar a few days ago with Texas library folks from across the state, and we had almost 1,000 people on that webinar, and we took a lot of questions. We were taking questions for like an hour and a half, and just you can tell that libraries are really carrying a very heavy load right now. They're dealing with personal issues. They're also trying to serve their communities and maintain their place in the community and in society. And they're thinking about all those things. So John asked what we were worried about, excited about, and curious about. So I've got a little bit for each category. So first, what I'm worried about is, of course, I'm worried about funding issues because of, of what may come out of this. But funding is funding. It comes and goes, and we deal. And you know, one hand gives and the other hand takes away. We found out that we're going to get a fairly substantial amount through the CARES Act. I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go on. So we deal with funding. We always deal with that. What's more concerning to me from a perspective of the institution is I'm concerned about losing the edge of being an essential service. And I'm afraid that we've gotten a little bit bogged down in a debate over the relative importance of keeping our staff safe versus serving the public. Both are critically important. And of course, in Texas, we tell people, and the way that we operate with the state library is, you know, it is of utmost importance to keep your staff safe, and we have to do that. And we do have people that are, you know, are struggling with the, you know, obviously with the health risks of this and all the other things that are going on. But we came out of the Harvey. We had Hurricane Harvey in Texas 3 years ago, and we came out of that very much in a stronger position with libraries, because we had libraries like Houston Public Library and many other smaller libraries that demonstrated that they were an essential service to their communities. And in fact, we like to point out that FEMA designates libraries as an essential service. So we were able to talk about the ways in which libraries serve communities and are a key part of that. Libraries in this is a different kind of crisis, obviously, than a hurricane. And it's a crisis that does require that the library be closed. And so I think there's a lot of concern about how we maintain our role as an essential service when we're closed. And so we worry about kind of losing that edge. But I think there are enough things in the what we're excited about category to kind of compensate for that. We see some really great opportunities opening up. I mentioned the CARES Act. We found out this week that Texas is probably going to receive somewhere around $2.5 million through the CARES Act to be able to address some issues in Texas, and that's going to really open up some possibilities to extend broadband, extend materials, devices, other types of technology to libraries all across the state. So we're really excited about that. It'll allow us to help position libraries not only to cope with the current crisis, but to cope with other types of crises that arise, and to kind of help offset any loss in the kind of the role of libraries through being closed that we've seen. So that's obviously great. We in addition to being able to put some key infrastructure in place, we also we've got kind of a laboratory test case right now to look at talking to libraries and the public about why some of the things that we've been saying need to be in place, do need to be in place. You know, we've been talking for a long time about the role of libraries as a you know, in serving the public when the public can't get to the library through remote access and so forth. So we're really seeing right now why that was an important track to be on. For example, as I'm speaking to the DPLA board, I'll mention that in membership, that I'll mention that we've got a project in Texas called eRead Texas, which is a project where we are standing up an application of Simply E with small community libraries all across the state. And we started this back in August. And we've been also purchasing content to be able to use through the DPLA exchange and other sources. So we've got content available to libraries that have stood up this application of Simply E with their local ILSs. Now, we've had about 60 libraries in the state of Texas that have gone forward with that, but that's out of a potential 200 that we thought we were going to be working with. So now we've got an opportunity to go back to those libraries that haven't taken advantage of letting us help them enable Simply E in their communities, and say, look, this is a perfect example of why it's important that you have this kind of resource. Your your customers could be accessing content that we've provided to the state if you'd done this. So it's just an opportunity to be able to go back and kind of reiterate the importance of that. And I think we're going to get a lot more takers on that project now. It's my observation that this crisis really demonstrates the need to shift the economy of our country much more towards an information-based economy that supports non-traditional work environments and remote working in ways that people can access versatily and nimbly over robust broadband networks. And that's something that all those things are things that we've been stressing for a long time, and the role of libraries to be able to deal with that and to help actualize that. But now we've got a wonderful test case and say, now we can demonstrate to you how libraries are able to help you move people to that kind of economy and to be able to work more in more non-traditional ways and over those kinds of networks that we're seeing. And what I'm curious about whether or not we can turn this moment to our advantage. I think we have seen other moments in the past where libraries were at a pivotal moment or pivotal crossroads. And being the enterprising profession that we are, librarians have been able to have some success capitalizing on that and being able to move libraries forward. But sometimes I feel as a profession, we miss opportunities for positive messaging. So I really feel like this is almost kind of like a once in a century chance to inform the narrative about the power of libraries and to actually move us to a more central role in our communities and among the groups that we serve. And I'm just curious to see how we can turn this moment to our advantage and assume really our rightful role as an actualized element in the social infrastructure, which is what we claim to be, what we should be, what we can be. And so that's pretty much what I've been thinking about.
Great. Thank you, Mark. Thanks so much. That's a lot. I want to, we've been joined by, and they've been there in the attendee room. I want to acknowledge a couple more board members, bringing us to 100% attendance, which I feel really lucky to have. Catherine Marr, who's the CEO of the Wikimedia Foundation, is here, and Jill Bourne, who is the city librarian for the city of San Jose, California, is here. And Jenny just turned on her video with her cool new glasses. Thank you all so much for being here and in person. I know all of you, all 105 of you participating in this call have a lot going on at this moment, and really appreciate your leadership and presence here with DPLA. Now I'm going to turn the mic to Kelvin Watson, who's the director of Broward County Libraries. And I think among those of us, at least those of us with the mic, is the only one who is on the job in his office 5 days a week during this time. Kelvin, thank you for being here. Thank you for your service, and over to you.
Hey, thank you, John, for inviting me, and I'm glad that you guys put the lineup the way that you did so that I can hear Katie and Mark's remarks. And so I'm going to kind of add to those and hopefully not repeat much of what they said, but certainly agree with all of their comments. And so, you know, I'm going to take your questions about, you know, what we're worried about, excited about, and curious about, and just kind of go over, you know, my comments and not, you know, specifically in that particular order. But what I'll say, you know, speaking about libraries being essential, and you said that I'm here every day. I've been here throughout this entire pandemic, as well as all of the library staff here in Broward County. We are all essential employees in the county. And despite some of my staff sometimes saying that they are not essential, we are essential, and we've been putting in some well needed work to provide, you know, for our communities. You know, I've worked on many virtual and digital projects over the past few years at Broward, and prior to Broward at the Queens Library and in my other various roles. And what I've seen certainly now is the challenges that actually Mark mentioned is, you know, libraries balancing customer needs with staff safety and containment. So we closed to the public about 3 weeks ago, and we canceled all of our programs probably about 4 weeks ago, at least through the end of May. So we, even though we're closed physically to customers, and I just looked at some comments. I apologize for my phone ringing because it hasn't done that since I've been listening. But that we are a large percentage of libraries, based on surveys that PLA have done, as well as the American Libraries has done, is that we are continuing to work. Staff is continuing to work, even though we're not working with the customers. So some of the things that we focused on here has been both on the physical side and digital side. For example, we've been doing a large physical inventory, weeding, and kind of preparing for when we're back open to the public. We've been focused on our digitization and scanning projects. We are assisting with the PPE needs of our healthcare workers and providers. We, leveraging our 3D printers and our sewing machines. We're creating masks. We're creating S-hooks. I didn't even know what an S-hook was, but we got, we're creating 150 S-hooks right now. We're doing online story times, as well as online library advisory services to our customers, so that they can discover these new electronic resources, ebooks and audiobooks that we have. We've also increased our online learning as well. I believe what I've seen, throughout this process, and I was on a book industry study group call last week, is that libraries have pivoted well. And for everyone that's in the book supply chain, those are the comments that also kind of came out, is that we've pivoted well because we are familiar with technology. We've been doing these things already. We just certainly increased them. And ebooks have really become the hero resource during this time. If you think about some of the comments that our customers have said to us, which have been, thank you for your ebooks during this time. These are the things that have helped me remain sane during this, staying at home and stay at home orders and distancing. Last fall, for example, we started expanding our ebooks, leveraging independent small and mid-sized publishers. We also added a lot of authors. So we were actually planning for making more resources accessible and providing more multi-access. So we have, despite not knowing what was going to happen, we had already been going in this direction because of what some of you know is what Macmillan did with their embargo. Some of the other comments that I wanted to say something specific about what I've been excited about is that when I looked at March 2019 compared to March 2020 of youth ebooks, our ebooks to youth has increased by 68.4%. So I'm still digging into that data, but I know that schools are closed here in Broward County, and I know that people are home, and that those are certainly anecdotally reasons why we're seeing this significant increase. Social media has also been a great hero. We've been Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and those are the conversations that repeatedly happen, even today, tweeting out and Facebooking some of our images of our staff sewing masks and making those S-hooks. During this digital, this really digital time, access, discovery, and delivery are key. And that's, certainly what we're all on this call about, this meeting about, is how to make materials accessible, discovery, and being able to deliver them to our communities during this time. One of the things that I'm excited about, and I would say some folks, something else I'm excited about, as well as worried about, is there's going to be a lot of funding that's going to be flowing in through the CARES Act around providing more digital access. And one of the things that we haven't been talking about as a profession holistically is that, well, I don't think we've solved that problem that we've had with our publishers and content providers around some of the pricing, some of the access, some of the discovery and delivery. So I'm hoping that we take this opportunity to actually talk about some of these things with our partners and have them give, I'll say give, but provide libraries with adequate pricing and other things. Again, I don't want that to be a missed opportunity during this time frame when libraries have essentially and are essentially a key component to making sure that our communities are being served. So those are my comments, John.
That was great. Thanks. Thank you, all three of you. And Denise, over to you. I think we've got at least a little bit of time if we want. We've got at least 5 minutes for discussion and Q&A. I'm happy to help manage as you see fit.
Well, I think we'll maybe expand this public meeting just a little bit longer in order to allow for Q&A, because I'm sure there's some really good questions out there. So why don't we plan on spending another, say, at least 10 minutes in this phase, and to allow our folks to bring in their questions. That being said, John, I am very happy to allow you to facilitate the questioning.
I will, and my colleagues, Kat and Susanna and Michael are standing by to facilitate the Q&A in the Zoom. You guys can, folks who have questions can put it in there. I guess I will start though, just by asking the board members whose faces I see in front of me, if anyone on the DPLA board has anything, want to drill down a little bit more on what you just heard.
This is Nico Fun from Oxford, and I just thought I would second those comments with regard to the impact of ebooks and the utility of ebooks in the current moment. We've seen about a 5-fold decline in our print book sales and about a, well, I'm sorry, that's not right. We've seen a ratio of decline of print sales to ebook increases. That's about 5 to 1. And so there's clearly a transition going on. And I think one of the big challenges that a lot of publishers, especially university presses and scholarly publishers and research publishers, will face is whether or not we continue to insist on publishing in all formats at the same time. I think that's been something that we've generally taken as an assumed standard, and I think that that is going to necessarily have to change, because the wheels of scholarly publishing and the entire scholarly publishing and research dissemination ecosystem can't suddenly grind to a halt for months on end. So that's the one issue that is absorbing, I think, a lot of people's discussion right now is how we approach that from the standpoint of new publishing. In journals, that's fairly uncomplicated, because in journals, it's all digital already. But on the book side, the print book still serves as this very important totem, this real signifier, and that, I think, for the foreseeable future is going to have to change as publishers make the decision to publish in various digital formats before the print format comes out. So I just thought I'd add that to the mix.
I have a question for Calvin and Mark. Have you found that the publishers in general have been friendlier with their licenses given the lockdown?
Calvin, go ahead.
I wouldn't necessarily say friendlier. I would say that Random House did come up with somewhat of a new pricing model. It wasn't much more beneficial than what they were doing before. When you really dig down in the numbers, certainly Macmillan, lifted the embargo that they had. But as far as the licensing and pricing, we are still paying a significant cost when it comes to those when it comes to all of primarily the big five, we're still paying the same prices, even though our spend has significantly, increased. I'm probably going to spend at least $500,000 to $1 million more in electronic resources, primarily ebooks, than I had planned on.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I guess my take, I totally agree with Kelvin. I haven't seen any, except from one thing on Penguin Books, I hadn't really seen anything that had been much of a change, and not even much of a change there. I will say that in Texas, we spend about $16 million a year on online e-resources for Texas libraries in a combination of state and federal funds. And we've had a number of our vendors come forward. In fact, pretty much all of the vendors have come forward with some kind of offer of something that they want to add to our contract at no additional cost to try to offer to our users. In some cases, we can. In some cases, we can't accept that depending on our contract terms with them. But we're obviously grateful to them for offering that. We'll see how much those items are used, but I think it's a good faith offer, and we do appreciate that.
Okay.
I'll ask Hazard one question, which ties remarks a couple of you made, but Mark in particular, the image you shared of folks pulling up to the parking lot or outside in front of the library trying to access Wi-Fi is, I think representative of a larger conversation that some of us have been having around the crisis and national failure we've had in terms of equitable access to broadband. I see Felton nodding, and Felton, you're one of the leading spokespeople in the country talking about this right now. I wonder if there's anything you want to add about kind of what we should be thinking about and what we should be planning for.
I just think that we have to have a national message, because I think when we get to that point that we start to reopen not only our libraries, but start to reopen our communities, there's going to be a need for access, and libraries are the natural kind of institution for that to follow. But we never seem to be fully ready. As take, for instance, how the food banks have been ready to really market themselves to the community for the need that people have. People understand that people needed food. And I'm on the food bank board. We're getting huge donations every day from different companies, different athletes and things of that nature. People understand that there's a need. We take all of our resources and we give to that need. Once we start to work through that need, when people are looking for jobs and they're looking to move beyond, there's this big need for access. How are libraries really speaking to that? How are we out there really talking to that, to the point that we are not only seeing funding coming in from hopefully governments and things of that nature, but community philanthropists who can give money to something that who they see that has a big need. And I just don't think the libraries are ready for that right now.
I just saw, sorry, there's so many windows popping open. Joe Lucia from Temple, I just saw your comment in response to Nico's, and the summary, the last sentence of your comment was, the scholarly book publishing system is in dire economic peril at this moment. I wonder if you want to, I don't know what magic button we need to hit to give you voice, but if we can do that and give you voice, would love for you to expand on that if you're willing, if you'd like. This is Joe from Temple University.
Do I have audio?
You
yes.
do.
So I was just talking with my press director this morning. We've been watching this challenge evolve for quite a while, and have had an ongoing conversation about the fact that the way ebooks are priced, at least in the scholarly publishing ecosystem, because of the bundling process, means that there's no incremental revenue on a title by title basis as titles are used, and we effectively float the economics of our press off continuously eroding incremental book physical copy sales. And there is not an economic model in place that I see for academic ebook licensing unless we radically rethink how we charge to cover the sunk costs for the editorial process to produce academic books the way they're currently produced. And we've had, and I've heard from, again, my press director that sales have dropped off a cliff across the board in the university press environment over the last month. And everyone's looking at larger deficits than they anticipated. The reality is this has been an unaddressed problem for a very long time. And this crisis may be the moment where certain things become either irretrievable or need to be radically rethought and reinvented. I know that in the current fiscal crisis, the amount of subvention that goes to my press just to make it whole is likely to make the press a target for closure. And I suspect you're going to see that at least 50% of the universities that host presses over the next 6 to 9 months. I think we are on the verge of a serious collapse in publishing infrastructure if something doesn't happen. That's pretty dire, but that's what I see.
And collapse of university academic publishing?
Of university press publishing, publishing, which is fundamentally the channel by which scholarly monographs in the humanities and social sciences circulate in the world at large. So an entire stream of scholarly content is going to need to find a new editorial process for development and a new distribution channel for finding audience. I really feel like this is an earth-shaking crisis in that world.
Joe, I'm grateful for you being here, for you raising it. As you may know, we've been in some discussions, or maybe you don't, but in the midst of this crisis, been talking to some of our like-minded folks in our field, folks that you know as well. And so I'd love to, anyway, as those conversations come together, I agree that there's an urgency and also an opportunity in the urgency. And I guess, I know there are lots of folks on the board who think about this, some of them full-time, and in any case, would be eager to follow up with you and talk more and figure out how we might engage on this more fully. I'm conscious of the time and looking at you, Denise, if okay, I might pull one last question out of the chat from Emily, which is about if any of you want to speak to this, it's about in technical services, what are you doing with the challenge of working remotely? We are cataloging a special library from afar and copy adding in some cases using derivative cataloging. I would say this is a relevant conversation that we've begun to have with several of our partners. Katie, maybe I'll start with you, and if you have a point on this, and if someone else wants to chime in, and then maybe we should, Denise, I'll look to you if you want to move.
Well, I think we should invite questions, invite follow-up to Emily's question, okay, after which we need to probably adjourn.
Katie,
yeah,
I know it's something you think about a lot.
Yeah, and I appreciate Emily's question. There's a question a little bit related to that just before that, just around remote work and collaboration in cultural heritage institutions. And I think on the cataloging side and at FSU, right now we're not doing any remote cataloging of physical materials, but certainly we're thinking about what that looks like, particularly for special materials, and doing a lot of remote work with metadata remediation in our digital collections, and thinking about how the digitization workflow may help facilitate some of the remote work, not just in metadata description for digital collections, but also in creating MARC catalog records on the other end. And I think both as an individual institution or organization at FSU Libraries, but then also thinking about some of our statewide partnerships and the potential for conversation across the DPLA network, is really being able to, as I think of it, project model, share tips and tricks, help create opportunity to do some of this work remotely that we have had to do or have been able to do physically, and sort of make the leap where we can, maintaining security and preservation and all of the best practices and standards that we do in a special collections or archives environment, but be imaginative in how we're able to support each other to share and describe that information. And some of this will depend on who can get into the building at what different point. But we've been in the Sunshine State Digital Network, we're hosting a series of calls every other week just to share remote work ideas and how to support each other in the difficulties of imagining this work in the short term or the long term. But I'm hoping out of that we're able to gain some ideas and insights, so we might be able to offer models to different organizations about how to achieve some of this work, so that the fundamental nature of the work that needs to be done, particularly in technical services, right now we're at a stopped point with it, but that can't continue because we won't be able to get to the things that we need to. So really thinking about that modeling.
Thank you, Katie. And I will say that your answer, the question, there's an anonymous question on a similar theme. This is something that we and the staff are also exploring with our network. So, you know, these questions of how we continue to partner well and leverage digital when we can't be together physically, and leverage materials when we can't be with the material physically, is something I think all of us are trying to figure out. Denise, I'm mindful of the time. We're at 2:26 on one of my clocks, so happy to take your lead on how you want to proceed. If you want to.
Well, I think at this point, and this has been a very useful conversation. However, we do need to move on to executive session. So I would recommend that we adjourn, and thank everyone profusely for their constructive engagement today.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
And board members, there's a separate link for the executive session where I will see you all shortly.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hope to see you at the next one.